listen to this. There's a bizarre new trend among climate activists now sweeping Europe, where environmentalists glue themselves to famous oil paintings, including Da Vinci's The Last Supper, in protest of big oil.
Fox News contributor Douglas Murray here to react. Douglas, big oil, the new boogeyman.
And not that new. I mean, they've been starting to grow this movement for some time now, specifically in Europe, where activists calling themselves various things, including Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, and various other things, have been gluing themselves to highways and just disturbing traffic so people can't get to their work and school. They've been playing all sorts of tricks of this kind. Of course, just on the Upper East Side in New York last week, there were Just Stop Oil activists letting down the tires on cars on the Upper East Side and leaving notes for the drivers saying that they're destroying the planet by driving their cars. And as I mentioned to one of our colleagues the other day, I'd like to see them try that trick in Texas. But anyway, but yes, they're doing all sorts of things. They've been developing this for a while. And now here is their latest genius idea, gluing themselves to masterpieces in galleries in Britain. They started in Glasgow, ended up at the Courtauld Institute, gluing themselves to a Van Gogh painting, now to a copy by one of Leonardo's pupils of The Last Supper. And every time they not only show disdain for the works of art, you know, they use graffiti paint to spray graffiti within centimeters of these masterworks. They unveiled a sort of horrible copy of a canvas over one of John Constable's masterpieces, very, very close to damaging that work. They not only show contempt for the works of art, which to my mind is contempt for civilization, but this incredible narcissism. This incredible narcissism. Who would do this kind of thing? What kind of certainty do you have to have?
Sure. But Douglas, we were just showing the Mona Lisa. Somebody rubbed, I believe it was frosting across Mona Lisa because she's an icon, probably the most famous portrait in the world. But here's the thing. The reason people are doing this is because there is little consequence. They can do it, they'll get on the news, and they don't get in trouble.
Oh, that's right. If you go to an art gallery like the National Gallery, where these activists were yesterday, if you go to a gallery like that and you get too close to the painting or sort of point to it, a guard will come over quite rightly and say, excuse me, could you just make sure you step back? But it turns out you can take spray paints and graffiti all around it and glue yourself to it. And what happens then is that a couple of so-called security guys come over and with their walkie-talkies, because they're armed with a walkie-talkie, you've got to remember, and they use their walkie-talkie and they say, could you be just possibly leave? So that's basically what happens. And let's remember, this is also getting worse in general for the fossil industry. All these groups say, just get off oil, as if we can just get off oil now. Absolutely untrue. And if they attack the headquarters of companies like Shell, as they have, a jury in Britain will not convict them.
Yeah. Well, glue has petroleum. That's very interesting. All right, Douglas Murray, thanks for joining us this morning with this bizarre trend.
Well, Andrea, this was the first time that she's spoken publicly since those subpoenas became public yesterday. And she said a couple of things that caught my attention immediately. One, she said that we can expect to see further subpoenas, more subpoenas of people who are Trump associates, people in his inner circle in the coming weeks as this investigation continues. Also notable that she did not rule out a potential subpoena of the former president himself. I asked her that specifically, and she told me, quote, anything is possible. Here's a little bit of our interview. I want to get you to hear exactly what she said and the scope of this investigation that she's leading. Take a look.
Could we expect to possibly see additional subpoenas from people in former President Trump's inner circle, former Trump associates?
Yes.
Are we talking about family members? Are we talking about former White House officials?
I mean, we'll just have to see where the investigation leads us. But I think that people thought that we came into this as some kind of game. This is not a game at all. What I am doing is very serious. It's very important work. And we're going to do our due diligence in making sure that we look at all aspects of the case. And so all you see is a prosecutor doing their due diligence.
Andrea, she made it very clear right there. She takes this very seriously. She takes this investigation very seriously. And she also made it clear to me in our interview that she's not in a rush. Remember, this special grand jury is able to convene for up to a year. They were seated back on May 2nd. So we're talking about a lot of runway for this investigation to continue. You know, I asked her if she could lay out any sort of a timeline. She did say that one thing she's going to do is pause around election time. All of this is even trickier because, remember, of course, we've got the 2022 midterms coming up, and she doesn't want to have any sort of even the perception that she's trying to influence the election. So she says that once early voting gets underway here in Georgia, that's early to mid-October, she's going to stop. We're not going to see any subpoenas. We're not going to see any indictments if she's gotten to that point until after the election, because she wants to make it clear that she's not trying to influence it. Now, she did respond. I asked her about that statement from Senator Lindsey Graham, and essentially she said that this is coming from somebody who doesn't understand the seriousness of what we're doing, and she said that she hopes he comes and testifies truthfully before the grand jury. Andrea.
This comes as a source familiar says former Trump White House counsel Pat Cipollone intends to comply with the subpoena issued last week by the January 6th committee for its separate investigation. That panel announcing its next hearing will be next Tuesday. And joining me now, NBC's chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander, Anna Palmer, founder of Punchbowl News, Jim Messina, former White House deputy chief of staff for operations and campaign manager for President Obama, and Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor. So, Peter, you just learned a few minutes ago that Pat Cipollone's transcribed interview will happen this Friday. That means that they're not taping it, so they won't be able to use those tape clips as they've been using rather effectively in their previous hearings, and he's not testifying in person, but he is coming in, and that was after a lot of public pressure and, you have to say, shaming.
Yeah, Andrea, I think that's exactly right. This is a significant moment for the January 6th committee to be able to get this interview with Pat Cipollone that will again take place on Friday. And to be very clear, having just spoken to this person familiar with the matter, I am now told that the interview that takes place Friday will be both transcribed and videotaped, which means they will have the potential to use some of the clips of the conversation with Cipollone going forward right now. His testimony could be crucial here, given the fact that we know that he was in and around the West Wing on January 6th and in the days leading up to it and after it as well. It was from Cassidy Hutchinson just last week, that former top aide to the former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who detailed some of the conversations she was involved in with Cipollone, where he said to her, among other things, that basically they would be facing every charge imaginable if they weren't able to stop President Trump from going up to the Capitol on January 6th. Separately, Cipollone himself, according to testimony, also communicated his concerns directly to Meadows, basically calling on him to call off the rioters. So what he can say about that timetable may be significant as well. Obviously, one of the concerns that has existed throughout this and why this will take place under subpoena after a subpoena was issued to Cipollone last week is that he might invoke executive privilege here or attorney-client privilege. But legal experts with whom I'm speaking and others who are joining you as part of this panel, I'm sure can also detail the fact that there are some conversations that wouldn't be privileged, conversations he had directly with Cipollone or with Meadows, basically conversations that were not directly with the president himself. So again, to be clear, this videotaped, transcribed interview with Pat Cipollone, the former White House counsel, will take place this Friday, giving new fodder for the investigation for the January 6th committee. Andrea?
And that's a really big development because he has been holding out and not wanting to be on videotape. That was one of the issues. And you saw all the pressure, of course, in that last round of hearings where the chair and the vice chair, Liz Cheney, said we need to hear from him. He was a key witness to these events and actually on the so-called right side of it as far as they're concerned, because he was arguing against a number of things and saying that they would be illegal.
This morning, new details emerging about the man charged with killing 7 people at the 4th of July parade in Highland Park, Illinois. Authorities say back in April of 2019, someone who knew the suspect called police to report he had attempted suicide, and months later, police were called to his home after a relative said he was threatening to kill his family.
A family member reported that Cremo said he was going to kill everyone, and Crimo had a collection of knives.
He was not arrested that day, but according to police, they confiscated more than a dozen knives and a sword.
At that time, there was no probable cause to arrest. There were no complaints that were signed by any of the victims.
On Tuesday, authorities searching the home where the suspect lives with his uncle Paul say they found more legally bought guns. Despite the prior incidents revealed by police, Paul Crimo insists there were no signs his nephew would carry out such an attack.
There's no warning signs.
Overnight, ABC News learning the suspect cleared 4 background checks between June 2020 and September 2021 and was able to legally buy the murder weapon. Illinois has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, including so-called red flag laws, but they did not come into play because the family never filed what's known as an extreme risk protection order. The president of the advocacy group Every Town for Gun Safety saying, quote, the shooter exhibited some dangerous warning signs, exactly what Illinois' red flag law is designed to address. But tools are only useful when they're taken out of the toolbox. Officials late Tuesday handed down first-degree murder charges.
The Lake County State's Attorney's Office has charged Robert Crimo III with 7 counts of first-degree murder. These are just the first of many charges that will be filed against Mr. Crimo. I want to emphasize that.
The prosecutor saying dozens of additional charges are likely. Authorities revealing the suspect fired more than 70 rounds into the parade crowd and dressed as a woman to hide his distinctive tattoos and blend into the crowd. Police say he had been planning the attack for weeks. The FBI and local police are poring over his social media footprint. Sources say they're finding a disturbing series of posts and videos that potentially point to a day of carnage. But those posts were never brought to law enforcement's attention.
We were not made aware of these videos.
Among the 7 victims of the attack, the parents of 2-year-old Aiden McCarthy. Aiden was found alive and covered in blood under the body of his father. The little boy now among the crowd of survivors whose lives are forever changed.
Our lives are going to be forever changed. It's going to take time to overcome it. I know that, but we will be okay because it's Highland Park strong.
Officials say so far there is no indication the victims were targeted because of their race or religion.